That's why today's third and final generational challenge is to finally step up and deal with the widespread environmental degradation taking place around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, in just the past 40 years, we human beings have wiped out fully 1/2 of marine vertebrates. The vast majority of the world's fish stocks are either fully exploited or overfished. We're adding millions of tons of plastic trash into the ocean every year. At this point, our ocean is so polluted that hundreds of dead zones exist where life simply cannot exist. On land, we are destroying the equivalent of 16 or 17 football fields of forest every minute. And because of the obscene amount of pollution that we allow into the air over the years, today 3.5 billion of the world's population live in communities that fall short of the air quality standards that are set by the World Health Organization. And of course, on top of these troubling statistics, there's the greatest threat that our planet has faced in modern history, in all of our history, climate change. Week after week, month after month, year after year, we continue to see new evidence of the danger that climate change poses to our planet. We learned recently that 2015 was the hottest year in recorded history, by far, after knowing that the decade before that was the hottest on record, and the one before that, the second hottest on record, and the one before that, the third hottest on record. And when does somebody stop and say enough? And now we already know this year is already on track to be the warmest of all. Now, most of you here are under the age of 30. And those of you who are may not be aware of it, but you haven't lived through one single month in your life, not one, that was cooler than its 20th century average. The facts are staggering. And yet, despite all the science, one of my former colleagues thought it would be persuasive to walk onto the floor of the United States Senate with a snowball in his hand and point to it as evidence that climate change is a hoax. I hate to tell you, folks, it proves something for sure, but not what he intended. Thankfully, as we saw in Paris last December, most of the world understands the severity of this threat and is moving decisively towards collective action to fix it. The Paris Climate Change Agreement that I had the privilege of signing with my granddaughter in my lap in New York a few days ago is important not because the text in and of itself is going to guarantee that we keep the level of temperature at 2 degrees centigrade and don't get the tipping point. That's not what it absolutely guarantees. It doesn't mean we'll avoid the worst effects of climate change. The Paris Agreement is important because of the clear signal it sends from nearly 200 nations to all sectors of the global economy that the future will and must be fueled by cleaner energy sources. Now, today we know the new energy future, the efficiencies, the alternative sources, the clean options, none of what we must achieve is beyond our capacity. It isn't as if we're sitting here stumped by a mathematical equation we can't figure out or by some, logarithm that was yet to be discovered. That's not the situation. There's only one question. Is doing something and what we need to do beyond our collective resolve? And happily, there is now a growing body of evidence that we're beginning to move in the right direction. Last year, global investment in renewable energy was at an all-time high, nearly $330 billion. For the first time in history, despite the low price of coal and oil and gas, more of the world's money was spent fostering renewable energy technologies than on new fossil fuel plants. So we're starting to break through. And by the middle of this century, it is projected that roughly $50 trillion will be invested in new energy, and the vast majority of that in clean energy. Now, if these numbers don't, as raw numbers, mean something to you, here's the upshot. The clean energy market of the future is the largest market the world has ever seen. My state of Massachusetts made a lot of money in the 1990s because we're a tech state. And we were riding the crest of computers and communications and so forth, not as much as a couple of other states, California, Texas, others. That economic energy of the 1990s created more wealth in our nation than at any time since the 1920s when we didn't have an income tax. And every single quintile of American taxpayer saw their income go up. Everybody. It was a $1 trillion market with 1 billion users. The energy market today, 4 to 5 billion users today. It's going to go up to 9 billion users if we do what we can do. And it is in the multi-trillions of dollars in the size of market. So if, in the spirit of Paris, we continue to pursue solutions together, the enormous economic benefits of that market is going to be felt by people everywhere. And the good news is this cooperation is actually written right into the Paris Agreement, because we all understand that this is, in fact, a generational challenge, and it will take a full generation to address what has to be done. And the Paris Agreement requires ongoing international collaboration, calling on the parties to ramp up their climate plans every 5 years, with a mandatory requirement that people engage in a measurement and then the ramp up. So our collective response actually gets stronger and stronger as time passes and technology evolves. Now, ultimately, our success is going to depend on whether we keep our eye on the ball and maintain the momentum that finally exists today. And in the time ahead, we are going to need an all-out global commitment, not only to clean energy, but to clean air, clean harbors, clean coasts, and the preservation of our endangered ocean and marine resources. Now, if you think current conflicts are all-consuming, imagine what happens when we add food shortages, water shortages, stronger storms, longer droughts, steady rises in sea levels, which are already being predicted, and entire countries swallowed by the sea. If we don't make the choices available to us today, then the problems of today are going to pale in comparison to what's coming down the road. And we don't hear a lot of people, not enough people, laying those real choices in front of you. The bottom line is that we don't have to sit here and wait for this to happen. If we accelerate the transition towards clean energy solutions, we have the technology, we have the knowledge. Solar has now moved down. I saw contracts the other day that are being sold at about 3 cents, 3 point something cents per kilowatt hour, less than that. In one case, Saudi Arabia did a solar contract for 2.9, I think it is. That is totally more than competitive with coal and other sources. But a lot of countries can't afford to do it. They need to make the transition. And I believe, President Obama believes, that the global community needs to come together in order to help them do it. If we do this, we have time to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. And the solution here is not a mystery. Our planet is not predestined for destruction. It is, as President Kennedy reminded us, in our hands when he said in his inauguration that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. And you can look in any scripture of any religion or any philosophy of life, and it will tell you something about creation preservation and the importance of our respect for our environment.